The patrol ship Velthar's Pride moved slowly through the empty space near the border. Commander Zixthara watched the stars through the main window, her forearms crossed behind her back. She had done this same patrol route hundreds of times. Nothing ever happened here. Nothing was supposed to happen here. The border stretched across dozens of star systems, marked by warning beacons that blinked red every few seconds. Beyond those beacons lay Sector 7 Delta. Most people called it the Dead Zone. No ship had crossed that line in 200 years. "Commander," called out Navigator Plex from his station. His voice sounded worried. "I'm getting strange readings from the sensors." Zixthara turned around, her large eyes focusing on the control panels. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures. Big ones. Coming from inside the dead zone." Plex's hands moved quickly over his controls. "This can't be right. The readings show technology levels way beyond anything in our databases." The commander walked over to look at the screen. Lines of light danced across the display, showing energy patterns that made no sense. The numbers were impossible. Nothing in the galaxy could produce that much power. "Run a full diagnostic on the sensors," she ordered. "This has to be a mistake." But the diagnostic came back clean. The sensors were working perfectly. Something inside the dead zone was producing massive amounts of energy. Something that shouldn't exist. Zixthara stared at the readings for a long time. Her people had been patrolling this border since before she was born. Her grandfather had told her stories about the early days, when the warnings were new and everyone still remembered why they existed. But those stories seemed like ancient history now. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," she finally said. "Emergency priority. Tell them we have unusual activity in Sector 7 Delta." The response came faster than she expected. Within an hour, her communication system lit up with an incoming call from the council chambers. The screen showed the familiar faces of the 12 species representatives, but they looked more serious than usual. Fleet Admiral Corvin of the Nexari spoke first. His ancient face was covered in the ritual scars that marked his rank. "Commander Zixthara, send us all the data you collected. Everything." She transmitted the sensor logs and waited. The council members studied the information in silence. Some of them looked confused, but the older ones seemed afraid. "This is impossible," declared war leader Kresh of the Kethmari Dominion. His species was known for their aggressive nature and powerful military. "These readings show technology centuries ahead of ours. Nothing in the dead zone could produce this." "You're wrong," Admiral Corvin said quietly. "Something could. Something did." "You mean the humans?" Kresh laughed, a harsh sound that came from deep in his throat. "The primitive species that destroyed themselves 2 centuries ago? They had chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They couldn't build anything like this." Councilor Vera of the Peaceful Syndicate raised one of her 6 arms. "Perhaps we should remember why the dead zone exists. Our ancestors placed those warnings there for a reason." "Our ancestors were afraid of ghosts," Kresh replied. "The humans are gone. They probably killed themselves with their own weapons decades ago. We're seeing equipment failures, not alien technology." Zixthara watched the argument continue, but her attention kept drifting back to the sensor data. The energy patterns were unlike anything she had ever seen. They seemed almost alive, pulsing with a rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat. Admiral Corvin's voice cut through the debate. "I was there during the first contact missions. I saw what happened to the Kethmari 3rd Fleet." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew the story, but few had heard it from someone who witnessed it. "The humans asked us to leave," Corvin continued. "They asked politely. They asked multiple times. When we refused, they showed us why we should have listened. That was 200 years ago," Kresh said. "Whatever they did, they paid for it with their own homeworld. So it was destroyed in the same explosion that took our ships." "Was it destroyed?" Corvin asked. or transformed? The question hung in the air like a threat. Zixtara had never thought about it that way before. The official records said that Sol had gone supernova, taking the human homeworld and the Kethmari fleet with it. But what if that wasn't the whole truth? These energy readings could be natural phenomena, suggested Dr. Mikhail of the Science Collective. Pulsars, quasars, or quantum storms. We shouldn't assume they're artificial. Look at the patterns, Admiral Corvin said, pointing at the data. Natural phenomena don't create geometric shapes. Natural phenomena don't pulse in mathematical sequences. Whatever is producing these signals is intelligent. Young Representative Talok of the Expansion League spoke up. If there really is advanced technology in the dead zone, we need to investigate. The knowledge could benefit all species. Several council members nodded in agreement. Zixtara could see the greed in their eyes. The promise of advanced technology was too tempting to ignore. I forbid it, Admiral Corvin said firmly. The border exists for a reason. No ship crosses into Sector 7 Delta. That rule has kept the galaxy safe for 2 centuries. Safe from what? Kresh demanded. From empty space and dead worlds? From something that turned its own star into a weapon, Corvin replied. From a species that chose to destroy their homeworld rather than submit to conquest. From beings that asked for isolation and meant it. The debate continued for hours, but Zixtara could see how it would end. The younger members outnumbered the older ones. They had never seen the power that created the dead zone. They thought the warnings were just superstition. When the vote came, it was closer than she expected. 7 species voted to authorize reconnaissance missions into Sector 7 Delta. 5 voted against. The motion passed. The investigation will begin immediately, Kresh announced with satisfaction. My people will lead the mission. We'll finally learn what's really in the dead zone. Admiral Corvin shook his head sadly. Then may the stars have mercy on us all. The communication ended, leaving Zixtara alone with her crew and the mysterious readings from beyond the border. She looked at the sensor data again, studying the impossible energy patterns. Something was watching them from the other side. She was sure of it now. The question was whether it would stay on its side of the border, or whether crossing that line would wake something that was better left sleeping. The warning beacons continued to blink red in the darkness, marking a boundary that had kept the galaxy safe for 200 years. Soon, someone would cross that line, and then they would all learn why the humans had asked to be left alone. The council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as the representatives waited for the emergency session to begin. Admiral Corvin sat in his usual place, but his mind was elsewhere, remembering events from 2 centuries ago that felt like yesterday, that the first human ship had appeared without warning, near the Velthari mining station at Kepler 442. The vessel was primitive by galactic standards, using chemical rockets and basic metal construction, but it was also massive, clearly designed to carry thousands of people across the vast emptiness between stars. Corvin had been a young officer then, serving aboard the exploration cruiser Eternal Wisdom. His captain had received orders to make first contact with the unknown species. Everyone expected it to be routine. New species were discovered regularly, and most were grateful for galactic protection and guidance. The humans were different. The council session began, pulling Corvin back to the present. War leader Kresh was speaking about his planned reconnaissance mission, boasting about his advanced stealth ships and experienced crews. The Kethmari Dominion has the best technology and the strongest warriors, Kresh declared. We'll enter the dead zone, gather information, and return with proof that the threat is gone. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Corvin said quietly. Enlighten us. Old one, Kresh replied with barely hidden mockery. Tell us again about the ancient humans and their primitive weapons. Corvin stood slowly, his old joints protesting. Very well. But remember that you asked for this story. The chamber fell silent. Even the younger representatives had heard fragments of the tale, but never from someone who lived through it. First contact occurred on Galactic Standard Date 2847.3, Corvin began. The human colony ship New Horizon was carrying 50,000 settlers to a world they called Kepler 442b. They had traveled for 40 years at sublight speed to reach it. He paused, remembering the excitement they had all felt. A species capable of such long journeys had to be special. Their ship was beautiful in its simplicity. No energy shields, no quantum drives, no antimatter weapons. Just metal and determination and a desire to find a new home among the stars. Primitive, Kresh muttered. Yes, primitive, Corvin agreed. That's what we thought too. Their leader was a woman named Captain Sarah Chun. She was small by galactic standards, but she carried herself like a warrior. When we offered to take them under our protection, she asked a simple question. What does protection cost? The memory was clear in Corvin's mind. Captain Chun had listened carefully as they explained how galactic civilization worked. How new species contributed resources and labor in exchange for advanced technology and security. How it was better to join willingly than to resist. She said no, Corvin continued. Just like that. No negotiation, no counteroffers. She said humanity would make its own way among the stars, but they appreciated our offer. And then the Kathmari moved in, Counselor Vera said softly. She had heard this part before. The Third Fleet surrounded their colony ship and demanded compliance. Corvin nodded. Fleet Commander Brutok gave them one standard day to surrender or be destroyed. Kresh shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Brutok had been his great-grandfather, a hero of the Dominion. The official records said he died fighting unknown aliens with impossible weapons. Captain Chun sent a single message in response, Corvin said. 3 words in their primitive language. Leave us alone. When Brutok refused, she sent another message. 5 words this time. We warned you. Leave now. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the air circulation system seemed to have stopped. Brutok laughed at the warning. How could a species with chemical rockets threaten the mighty Kathmari fleet? So he gave the order to fire. Corvin's voice became distant, remembering the horror that followed. The human ship didn't try to run. It didn't fire weapons. Instead, it sent a tight beam transmission toward their home system. Just a few seconds of data, traveling at light speed. A message to their homeworld? Dr. McHale asked. Instructions, Corvin corrected. 3 years later, we learned what those instructions contained. He touched a control on his chair, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed the Sol system as it existed 2 centuries ago. A bright yellow star surrounded by planets, including the beautiful blue world called Earth. Humanity had turned their entire star into a weapon, Corvin said simply. They destabilized Sol's core using a technique we still don't understand. The star became a directed gamma-ray burst, aimed precisely at the coordinates Captain Chen had transmitted. The display changed, showing the moment when Sol exploded. But instead of expanding in all directions like a normal supernova, the energy formed a narrow beam that crossed 60 light-years of space in seconds. Brutok's fleet was completely destroyed. Not damaged, not defeated, obliterated. 800 ships and 2 million warriors, gone in an instant. Kresh was staring at the display in shock. That's impossible. No species would destroy their own homeworld just to kill an enemy fleet. Humanity did, Corvin said. They sacrificed everything rather than submit to conquest. Their star, their planet, their entire civilization, all of it burned away to send a message. But the readings show activity in the dead zone, Representative Talok protested. If humanity destroyed their homeworld, how can anything still be alive there? Corvin smiled grimly. That's the question, isn't it? The official records say Sol went supernova. But what if that wasn't destruction? What if it was transformation? The thought sent chills through the chamber. Dr. McHale spoke first. Are you suggesting they somehow survived the destruction of their star? I'm suggesting that a species capable of turning their sun into a weapon might be capable of other impossible things. Colvin replied. The energy readings Commander Zixthara detected could be proof that humanity didn't die in the Sol incident. They evolved. Evolved into what? Councillor Vera asked. Something we can't comprehend, Corvin said. Something that asked for isolation 200 years ago and has been waiting patiently for us to respect that request. Kresh stood up, his pride wounded by the implications. This is all speculation. Even if humans somehow survived, they've had 2 centuries to contact us if they wanted something. Their silence proves they're either dead or no longer a threat. Or it proves they're showing mercy, Corvin said quietly. Perhaps they're giving us time to learn wisdom. The debate that followed was heated but pointless. The vote had already been taken. Kresh's reconnaissance mission would proceed as planned. As the session ended and the representatives filed out, Corvin remained in his chair, staring at the holographic display of the Sol system. He had been young when humanity destroyed their star, but he was old enough now to understand what it meant. A species that could turn their sun into a weapon was not gone. They were waiting. And soon, the galaxy would learn whether humanity's patience had limits. The display showed Sol as it had been before the transformation, a peaceful yellow star surrounded by worlds full of life. But Corvin knew the truth. Sol was still there, still burning, still watching. And now someone was finally going to find out what it had become. The 3 Kethmari stealth ships crossed the border in perfect formation. War Leader Kresh watched from the bridge of the Dominator's Fist as the warning beacons disappeared behind them. For the first time in 200 years, alien ships were entering human space. All systems normal, reported his second-in-command Subleader Vex. Cloaking fields are stable. No signs of detection. Kresh nodded with satisfaction. His ships used the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. They could slip past any defense system ever created. Whatever was left of humanity wouldn't even know they were there. The first day passed without incident. Their sensors detected dozens of star systems, but no signs of life. The worlds they scanned appeared dead. No energy signatures. No radio transmissions, no heat sources that would indicate civilization. See? Kresh said to his crew. Just as I predicted. Empty space and dead rocks. The humans are gone. But Navigator Zek looked troubled as she studied the sensor readings. War Leader, something is strange about these worlds. The planets are all perfectly positioned in their orbits. No drift, no wobble. No signs of natural gravitational changes. What does that mean? Vex asked. It means someone or something has been maintaining their positions for 2 centuries, Zek replied. Dead worlds don't stay in perfect orbits without help. Kresh dismissed the concern. Automated systems. The humans probably set up maintenance robots before they died. Keep scanning. On the 2nd day, they found their first human world. It had once been called New Geneva, according to their databases. The planet showed no signs of current life, but the ruins of a human city were clearly visible from orbit. Take us down for a closer look, Kresh ordered. The Dominator's Fist descended through the atmosphere and flew over the abandoned city. The buildings were intact, but empty, as if everyone had simply vanished one day. Plants had grown wild in the streets, but they grew in strange patterns that almost looked planned. War Leader, called out Sensor Operator Drex. I'm getting unusual readings from the city center. Energy patterns that don't match any known technology. On the main screen, they could see a large building in the middle of the city. It looked like a human temple or government center, but it glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed rhythmically. Land near that building, Crash ordered. We'll investigate. But as their ship touched down, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. What's happening? Crash demanded. Unknown energy field is surrounding the ship, Drex reported, panic in his voice. It's interfering with our systems. Weapons are offline, engines are offline, communications are. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the bridge in red light. Get us out of here, Crash shouted. But when they tried to lift off, nothing happened. The ship wouldn't respond to any commands. Then the glowing building began to change. The blue light grew brighter, and shapes started moving within the light. Figures that looked almost human, but not quite right. War leader, Zek said quietly. The sensor readings from those figures. They show as both solid matter and pure energy. That's impossible. Through the main window, they could see the figures approaching their ship. They moved like humans, but they seemed to flicker in and out of existence with each step. Suddenly, the ship's communication system activated on its own. A voice spoke in perfect Kethmari language, though no human should have been able to learn their tongue. Welcome to New Geneva, the voice said. It sounded human, but there was something else underneath it, like multiple voices speaking as one. You are guests here. Please do not be afraid. Who are you? Crash demanded. Show yourselves. We are the people who once lived in this city, the voice replied. We are still here, though not as we once were. You wish to observe us. Now we invite you to understand us. The figures outside had reached their ship. Up close, Crash could see that they looked exactly like the humans in the historical records, but they seemed to be made of light and shadow instead of flesh and blood. This is impossible, Vex whispered. Humans are organic beings. They can't exist as energy. We were organic, the voice agreed. Before the transformation, before we learned what we could become. One of the figures placed its hand on the ship's hull. Despite the thick armor plating, Crash could swear he felt warmth spreading through the metal. The sole incident, the voice continued, was not destruction. It was rebirth. Your people forced us to choose between slavery and transcendence. We chose transcendence. You destroyed your own planet, Crash accused. We transformed our sun into a gateway, the voice corrected. Earth was not destroyed. It was translated, moved to a place between spaces where we could exist as we chose to become. The ship's system suddenly came back online, but the controls still wouldn't respond. They were free to observe and record, but not to leave. Your sensors detect us as both matter and energy because we exist in both states simultaneously, the voice explained. We are human consciousness freed from the limitations of flesh. We are what your species might become, given time and wisdom. Why are you showing us this? Crash asked. Because you came looking for answers. Because your leaders voted to violate our isolation. Because the galaxy has forgotten why we asked to be left alone. The figures began to move away from the ship, but their voices remained clear through the communication system. Follow us, they said. See what human space has become. Learn what we built in our isolation. Then return to your people and tell them why the border must never be crossed again. Against his will, Crash found himself ordering his crew to follow. The ship lifted off, guided by forces beyond their understanding. As they flew over the abandoned city, he began to see things that hadn't been visible from orbit. The wild plants weren't growing randomly. They formed patterns and shapes that spelled out messages in dozens of languages. The empty buildings weren't truly empty. They pulsed with the same blue light, as if inhabited by invisible residents. War leader, Drek said shakily. I'm detecting similar energy signatures all over the planet. Millions of them. The humans aren't gone. They're everywhere. The truth began to dawn on Kresh. New Geneva wasn't abandoned. It was full of humans who existed in a way that his people couldn't detect or understand. How many of you are there? He asked. All of us, the voice replied. Every human who lived when the transformation began. Every human who has been born since. We are still growing, still learning, still becoming. But the other ships that patrol the border, they detect nothing. Because we choose not to be detected, the voice said simply. We exist in harmony with space itself. We are part of the quantum foam that underlies reality. We are everywhere and nowhere, visible only when we wish to be seen. The ship was climbing toward orbit now, leaving the glowing city behind. But Kresh could see other lights beginning to appear across the planet's surface. Cities that had been invisible before, becoming visible, showing a world that wasn't dead but transformed. This is just one world, the voice said. We will show you others. We will show you what 2 centuries of unrestricted growth and development can achieve when a species is no longer bound by physical limitations. As they reached orbit, Kresh looked back at the planet below. What had appeared to be a dead world was now alive with countless points of light, each one representing human consciousness, existing in ways that defied everything he thought he knew about life and physics. And this was just the beginning of their journey into human space. Space twisted around the Kethmari ships like water flowing around stones. War leader Kresh gripped his command chair as reality bent in ways that made his eyes hurt. One moment they were orbiting New Geneva, the next they were floating in a system he didn't recognize. Where are we? Subleader Vex asked, his voice tight with fear. Approximately 400 light-years from your entry point, the human voice answered through their communication system. This journey would have taken your ship several months. We brought you here in minutes. Through the main window, Kresh could see 3 planets orbiting a blue-white star. But these weren't normal planets. They glowed with their own light, and their surfaces seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Welcome to the Forge Worlds, the voice continued. Here we learn to reshape matter at the quantum level. Here we practice what you might call magic, though it is simply science beyond your current understanding. The ship moved toward the nearest planet without any input from the crew. Kresh tried to regain control, but the navigation system showed impossible readings. According to their instruments, they were simultaneously moving toward the planet and already on its surface. Your minds are struggling to process what you're seeing, the voice said, with something that sounded like sympathy. We understand. We went through the same confusion during our early years of transformation. The planet's surface came into view, and Kresh's crew gasped in unison. Cities covered the entire world, but they were unlike anything in galactic civilization. The buildings grew like living things, constantly changing shape and size. Bridges made of pure light connected floating structures that defied gravity. Gardens of crystal trees reached toward the sky, their branches singing in harmonies that somehow transmitted through space. This is impossible, Navigator Zek whispered. You can't build cities like this. Physics doesn't work that way. Physics works however we choose it to work, the voice replied. When consciousness becomes quantum, when thought becomes reality, the old rules no longer apply. A figure appeared on their bridge without any doors opening or walls being breached. It looked human, a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. But she flickered slightly, as if she wasn't entirely solid. I am Dr. Sarah Kim, the figure said. I was a physicist before the transformation. Now I am something else. I will be your guide for this part of the journey. Kresh reached for his sidearm, but his hand passed through empty air. The weapon was simply gone. Violence has no meaning here, Dr. Kim explained calmly. "We exist beyond physical harm. Your weapons cannot touch us, just as our power cannot truly hurt you unless we choose it to. What do you want from us?" Crash demanded. "Nothing," she replied. "But you wanted to observe us. So we are showing you what we became after you forced us to choose between slavery and transcendence." The ship descended toward the crystal cities. As they flew between the impossible structures, Crash began to see the inhabitants. Billions of humans moved through the streets and flew between the buildings without any visible technology. They seemed to reshape reality with their thoughts, creating and destroying matter at will. "How many of you survived the transformation?" Vax asked. "All of us," Dr. Kim said simply. "Every human who lived when soul became a gateway. Every human born since then. Death has no meaning for us now. We exist in the quantum foam that underlies reality. We are part of the universe itself. But you're still human?" Zek asked uncertainly. "We are what humans chose to become," Dr. Kim replied. "We retained our consciousness, our memories, our connections to each other. But we freed ourselves from the limitations of flesh and bone." The ship landed in what appeared to be a public square, though the ground seemed to be made of flowing energy rather than solid matter. Thousands of human figures gathered around them, all flickering between solid and transparent. "They want to see you," Dr. Kim explained. "Most of us have not encountered other species since the transformation. You are curiosities. Are we prisoners?" Crash asked. "You are guests," Dr. Kim corrected. "But you cannot leave until we are finished showing you what you came to see. Your people voted to investigate human space. We are giving you a complete investigation." She gestured, and the square around them changed. Suddenly, they were standing in a vast library, though the books seemed to be made of light, and the shelves stretched up infinitely in all directions. "This is our memory palace," Dr. Kim said. "Here we store everything we have learned since the transformation. Science, art, philosophy, history, all of it preserved in quantum storage that will last until the heat death of the universe." She touched one of the light books, and information flowed directly into Crash's mind. Mathematical equations that described how to manipulate space-time. Artistic visions that show beauty beyond anything he had imagined. Historical records of humanity's journey from Earth to the stars and beyond. "This is what we gained when we gave up our physical forms," Dr. Kim said. "Perfect knowledge, perfect memory, perfect unity with the cosmos. But what did you lose?" Zek asked quietly. For the first time, Dr. Kim's expression showed sadness. "Everything that made us vulnerable. Pain, fear, loneliness, death, all gone. But also, the struggle that made life meaningful. The uncertainty that made each choice important. The separation between individuals that made love precious." She waved her hand, and they were back in the Crystal City. But now Crash could see the truth beneath the beauty. The humans moved with perfect coordination, but there was no joy in their movements. They created wonders without effort, but there was no satisfaction in their achievements. "We are becoming less human with each passing year," Dr. Kim admitted. "We retain the memories of what we were, but the experiences that shaped those memories are fading. Soon we may forget entirely what it meant to be mortal." "Then why show us this?" Crash asked. "Why not let us believe you were dead?" "Because you need to understand the price of forced evolution," she replied. "We didn't choose this transformation willingly. We were driven to it by species that saw us as inferior, as servants to be conquered and controlled." The scene changed again, and they found themselves floating in space above a planet that looked exactly like Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It was beautiful and perfect. "This is New Earth," Dr. Kim said. "We created it as a memorial to what we lost. Every human who transcended visits here, to remember what we used to be. But as they watched, Kresh could see that the planet was empty. No cities, no people, no signs of life. Just an empty world maintained as a monument to humanity's past. We could return to physical form if we chose, Dr. Kim continued. We could rebuild our civilization as it was before. But we no longer remember how to want that. The transformation gave us everything except the desire to be anything other than what we became. Is that why you wanted isolation? Vex asked. To prevent other species from forcing the same choice on you again? Partly, Dr. Kim nodded. But also to give us time to decide what to do with our new existence. We have power that could reshape the galaxy, but we no longer have clear desires about what shape it should take. She turned to face Kresh directly. That is why the border must remain. Not because we are dangerous to you, but because we are dangerous to the very concept of organic life. Contact with us changes other species in ways they cannot predict or control. What do you mean? Kresh demanded. Instead of answering, Dr. Kim simply smiled. And in that moment, Kresh realized that something was different about his own thoughts. He was seeing the world around him with new understanding, processing information in ways that felt alien, but somehow right. The transformation had already begun. War leader Kresh felt the change spreading through his mind like warm water. His thoughts were becoming clearer, faster, more connected to everything around him. He could sense the quantum fluctuations that held reality together, feel the consciousness of every human in the Crystal City. What did you do to us? Sub-Leader Vex demanded, but his voice sounded different. More harmonious, as if it was already adapting to new frequencies of existence. Nothing permanent, Dr. Kim replied gently. We're simply sharing our perspective with you, temporarily, so you can understand what we tried to explain with words alone. Navigator Zek was staring at her hands in wonder. I can see the molecular structure of my own skin. I can feel the atomic bonds holding my body together. And beyond that? Dr. Kim prompted. The quantum foam, Zek whispered. It's alive. It's conscious. Everything is connected to everything else. Kresh tried to fight against the sensation, but it was like trying to resist the tide. His awareness expanded beyond his physical body, beyond the ship, beyond the planet. He could sense other worlds throughout human space, each one unique, each one impossible. Come, Dr. Kim said. Let us show you the fullness of what we became. Space folded around them again, but this time Kresh could perceive the process directly. Reality was like a vast ocean, and they were moving through its currents rather than across its surface. The journey that would have taken months happened in heartbeats. They emerged in a system that defied every law of physics Kresh had ever learned. 7 stars orbited each other in perfect harmony, their gravitational fields creating stable zones where planets shouldn't exist. But there they were, worlds that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their surfaces shifting between different states of matter. The memorial system, Dr. Kim announced. Here we preserve every possible version of humanity that could have existed. They descended toward the nearest planet, and Kresh gasped at what he saw. The world was divided into sections, each one containing a different version of human civilization. In one area, humans had developed along biological lines, becoming giants with 4 arms and enhanced intellects. In another, they had merged with machines, creating cybernetic beings that blurred the line between organic and artificial life. Every choice we didn't make, Dr. Kim explained. Every path we didn't take. We preserve them all here, maintaining them as possibilities that still exist somewhere in the quantum foam. But why? Kresh asked. Because consciousness is too precious to waste, she replied. Every potential form of awareness, every possible way of thinking and being, they all have value. We couldn't bear to let any of them disappear forever. They visited section after section, seeing humans who had adapted to living gas giants, humans who existed purely as information patterns, humans who had learned to manipulate time itself. Each group was thriving in its own way, but all of them were isolated from each other. They don't interact, Vex observed. Each group exists in its own separate reality. Contact between such different forms of consciousness can be problematic, Dr. Kim admitted. We learned that early in our transformation. Some forms of awareness cannot coexist safely. The implication hit Crash like a physical blow. That's why you wanted isolation from the galaxy. Not just to protect yourselves, but to protect us. Organic consciousness is fragile, Dr. Kim agreed. Exposure to our transformed awareness can cause changes, irreversible ones. She gestured, and they found themselves standing on an observation deck overlooking the entire memorial system. Dozens of worlds spread out before them, each one a testament to the infinite possibilities of consciousness. This is what we spent 2 centuries building, Dr. Kim said. Not weapons or technologies, but possibilities. We became gardeners of consciousness itself, preserving and nurturing every form of awareness we could imagine. It's beautiful, Zek whispered, and Crash could hear the change in her voice. The temporary contact with human consciousness was affecting her permanently. And dangerous, Dr. Kim added sadly. Beauty often is. You came here as Kethmari, thinking like your own species, understanding reality through your biological limitations. But you cannot leave unchanged. The knowledge of what consciousness can become will haunt you forever. Crash felt the truth of those words. He could still sense the quantum foam, could still feel the connections between all things. Even when this vision ended, he would remember what it felt like to exist beyond physical form. This is the real reason for our isolation, Dr. Kim continued. Not cruelty, but mercy. We learned that some transformations cannot be undone. Some knowledge cannot be forgotten. We didn't want to force that burden on other species. But you're doing it anyway, Vex pointed out. Because you refuse to respect the boundary, Dr. Kim replied. Because your leaders decided that human space was theirs to explore. Now you will return to them with the knowledge of what exists here, and that knowledge will spread. The scene around them began to fade, and Crash felt himself being pulled back toward normal space-time. The expanded awareness was leaving him, but slowly, gently, like a tide withdrawing from the shore. Some of your people will go mad trying to understand what you've seen, Dr. Kim said, as her figure became transparent. Others will become obsessed with achieving the same transformation. Your civilization will fracture as different groups choose different paths forward. Then why let us see any of this? Crash demanded. Why not just destroy us and preserve the secret? Because we are still human enough to hope, Dr. Kim replied. Perhaps your species will be wiser than ours were. Perhaps you will choose unity over transcendence, cooperation over transformation. They were back in normal space now, floating near the border of human territory. The 3 Kethmari ships were intact, their crews shaken but alive. Your memories of the quantum awareness will fade, Dr. Kim's voice said through their communication systems one last time. But the knowledge that such awareness exists will remain. That is our gift and our curse to you. The human presence withdrew, leaving them alone among the stars. Crash looked around his bridge and saw the confusion in his crew's eyes. They remembered everything they had seen. But the feeling of expanded consciousness was already becoming like a half-remembered dream. Set course for the border, he ordered quietly, as they flew back toward galactic space. Crash composed his report to the council. How could he describe what they had experienced? How could he make them understand that humanity had become something beyond their ability to comprehend or control? War leader, Vex said softly. Do you think we made the right choice? Crossing the border? Kresh stared at the stars ahead, knowing that some of them might be conscious entities like the transformed humans. I don't know, but I understand now why Admiral Corvin tried to stop us. When they reached the border, the warning beacons seemed different somehow. More urgent, more meaningful. They weren't just marking a political boundary. They were protecting the galaxy from knowledge that could destroy it. 3 weeks later, Kresh stood before the Galactic Council to deliver his report. He spoke for hours, describing everything they had seen, trying to make the representatives understand the magnitude of what lay beyond the border. When he finished, the chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, Admiral Corvin spoke. And now you know why the boundary exists. What do we do with this knowledge? Councillor Vera asked. We forget it, Corvin replied firmly. We classify the reports, we strengthen the border, and we never speak of it again. But Kresh knew it was too late. The seed of knowledge had been planted. Already he could see some representatives looking thoughtful, calculating, wondering if their own species might achieve similar transcendence. The warning beacons would continue to blink red in the darkness, marking a boundary that protected the galaxy from its own curiosity. But Kresh feared that the protection would not last forever. Humanity had shown them mercy this time. But mercy, like patience, had limits, and somewhere beyond the border, in the quantum foam that connected all things, the transformed humans waited and watched, hoping the galaxy would prove wise enough to leave them alone.